some more stories?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, our next storyteller, he's also a person who's had a lot of experience on multiple stages, and we're very fortunate to have him back. This is his second time at Fireside. Please welcome Mr. Mont Wilson.
Her name meant heavenly or divine. A couple of years ago, a psychic responded to my stepmother's call to visit my father's hospice at his Albuquerque studio home to serve as his spirit walker, a Native American guide for the souls of those transitioning from this world to the next, and also to serve as a guide for his grieving family through this process of letting him go. The psychic stood 5 feet tall and possessed long black hair. Native American amulets and crystals adorned her neck and fingers. Her eyes reflected the shell-shock weirdness of a soldier who has seen things no one should see. Before my father's voice faded to a whisper, and then silence, he slurred that he saw lights sparkle at the foot of his hospice bed. I did not see those lights, but the psychic diagnosed what my father saw. Those lights are Fred's ancestral grandmothers going back in time to Africa. I see them. They surround his bed. I hear them. They whisper his name. I understand their languages. They tell him everything is going to be all right. They tell him to leave this world and join them in the next. I sheltered in my father's empty bedroom while the family held a death vigil around his hospice bed in the living room. I sorted through my father's papers and found a poem he wrote titled Flight Across Heaven's Gate, about the flight of the soul from the body upon death. The psychic entered the bedroom. Andre, your father wants you to spend some time alone with him. I thought, what do you know what my father wants? He can't even speak. But then I looked into the psychic's eyes, and I knew. I followed her. The psychic ushered grieving family and friends from the living room. I thought, where are you going? You leave me alone with my father? I thought you were supposed to help me. But the psychic closed the door behind her. I turned and faced the man lying on the hospice bed. I approached and stroked his bald head. His brown, wrinkled skin began to release the stress and strain of his life. I thought of his poem. Whatever time is left in life, each creative step of duty renders puts us close, but not too late, to that flight across heaven's gate. I looked around the living room, decorated with awards and artwork from a 60-year career in pottery. I looked at the faces of my father's carvings and sculptures and hoped to see the ancestral spirits that the psychic saw. But I saw nothing but clay. I watched my father's chest rise and fall, rise and fall. I feared his heart would stop beating during my watch. The day after my father passed, I went behind the guest house to the garage that had been converted into his pottery studio. During the death vigil, a pottery collector had called for an appraisal of a sculpture titled Flight Across Heaven's Gate. The mural. Now, I knew of the poem Flight Across Heaven's Gate, but there's a mural too? I had to find the answers, and the pottery studio was where my father kept his files. As I opened the studio door, I saw hundreds of migrating mule moths swarmed around the room and battered the windows with their wings. Those moths were not here yesterday. I crossed the moth storm to the file cabinet. I found photos, sketches, receipts showing that in 1985, my father had created a 5 feet wide, 8 feet tall, quarter-ton ceramic mural titled Flight Across Heaven's Gate to accompany the poem. The mural depicted the human soul released from the body in the form of a giant white bird rising above the southwest desert into heaven. My father had hoped the sculpture would take him places as a potter, but it only went as far as Jersey. I looked around behind me. My father's widow had entered his studio. Alongside her stood the psychic holding a white bowl of holy water. The widow apologized. Andre, I'm sorry to interrupt your research, but we need you to leave. Moths continued to swarm around the studio and batter the windows with their wings. I took one look at the psychic's eyes and fled. That evening, during dinner and discussions about possible dates for Dad's memorial service, the psychic sat beside me and asked, "Do you have a partner?" I thought, you should know this. But I answered, yes, Rob and I have been together for 20 years. The psychic sighed. I would love to meet someone, but it's hard when you see dead people. Sometimes I like the dead people better than the living. But other times, they are not as nice. On the morning of my departure from Albuquerque, I visited my father's pottery studio to gather more of his papers into my bag. As I opened the studio door, I saw nothing. The moth swarm that had battered the windows yesterday vanished. Just what does a psychic do with that bowl of water? I shifted a newspaper on my father's work table. A single moth fluttered to the air and flew off. Thank you.